circuit breakers in. We have separation. I've got a blowout. Amber 3. Flight comm, I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
So it's obviously not a $6 million battery, but I think you get where I'm going with this. I took a battery that had a terrible build, absolutely terrible build quality, but had nice cells, and I completely rebuilt it. I upgraded it. I upgraded the wires, I upgraded the BMS, I added a bunch of functionality. So today I'm going to show you what I did and how I built it. So stay tuned, I think you're going to enjoy this. So I removed the cells out of the old battery case. Got the insulation off of it, cleaned them up as best as I could. The safety valves are now exposed. I still have a little bit of cleanup to do, but it's enough that I can move forward to my next steps. So the next step include improving the wires and improving the BMS. The old battery that these cells came out of was a 100 amp battery, and it used 8-gauge wire, doubled up 8-gauge wire, but still way too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these small 8-gauge wire with 4-gauge wire. So I'll be doubling up 4-gauge wire, and I'm going to be making this a 150 amp battery. So 2 doubled up 4-gauge wires will be able to handle it much better than these old 8-gauge. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade the BMS. Now this is a JBD 100 amp BMS, and I like JBD. In fact, I'm going to be replacing it with another JBD. What I didn't like about this was a couple of things. First, it has those small 8-gauge wires, which I could have replaced and used, but I didn't like this BMS in general. The low temperature protection sensor never worked, and it doesn't have Bluetooth. So I'm going to be replacing it with its big brother. You can see the difference just in size. This is going to be much better. And this one has the Bluetooth dongle. It has those 4-gauge wires, so we'll be able to handle the 150 amp current. And it is a 150 amp BMS, and it does have a low temperature and high temperature sensor that actually works. So this is what I'm going to be wiring up on the negative side. So this is going to be a huge improvement, beefier wire, much more features, and a sensor that actually works. So now I'm going to show you how easy it is to wire a BMS to a 12-volt battery. These cells are a little bit different for a couple of reasons. First reason is normally when you get a cell on a DIY project, they have these type of ends on them. And then you just take your balance lead, you crimp an end on it, put it over, and then you just screw it tight. And that's how it works. So these balance leads were just soldered on. You can see the remnant there, there, there. I'm not going to solder or weld anything. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a screw in each one and put the balance lead on that. The second thing about this is a 12-volt battery, which is a 4S battery. But you can see there's 8 cells. So they're in parallel. Each one of these pairs is in parallel, and then they're wired in series. So this is a 2P 4S setup. So each one of these 100 amp hour cells is doubled up to make a 200 amp hour 12-volt battery. So now let me show you what I'm going to do. I've already put one of these in. I'm going to take it out real quick. So I'm going to drill a hole here, 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 and here. Then I'm going to take my balance lead, and always make sure your balance lead is detached from your BMS before you start wiring it. So I'm going to take my balance lead, and I'm going to show you how to wire this. But we're going to take this, I'm going to take this, and we're going to put it like that. And that is how we are going to attach our balance lead. So the negative goes here, then we're going to have a negative, positive, 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 And then the last one here will be the red wire. So first I'm going to drill holes, and then I'm going to show you how to wire it up. So if for some reason you decide to do a build like this with cells that are already wired and you want to copy my build completely, be careful drilling into the battery. Don't want to go too far, because if you drill into the cell, you'll have a world of hurt. So on your balance lead harness, you're going to have 5 wires. This black one is going to be the negative. So it's going to go here. This is going to be our new negative terminal. That'll go right there. The first white wire is going to go right here. The second white wire is going to go right here. The third and final white wire is going to go right here. And then the red wire, this wire, is going to go here. So this is going to be our new positive. This is going to be our new negative. So between here and here, we're going to have a 12-volt battery. So now I'm going to wire it up. I'm going to have to drill these down, so you might not be able to see some of it, but that's what I'm going to be doing. Black, white, 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 red. And afterwards, we're going to test it to make sure that it's wired correctly, and I'll show you how to do that too. So there's our first white. Now I'm drilling these in and setting them, but I'm not making them really tight, and I'll show you why in a second. Here's that second white. This is our third and final white. And here's our red. It's our last wire. Going our last group of cells. So now I'm going to bring all the wires this way, and I'm going to tighten them down. Now that they're tight, I can show you how to test the harness. So you got to have a multimeter. This is just a Harbor Freight multimeter. And here's the harness. Here's the black of the harness on the top. Take the black of the multimeter, put it on that first one, line it up with the black. Take the red, the positive, and I'm going to put it on the first one. Because of how I got these cells, I'm not able to top balance these cells. If you had top balanced them, which is a whole nother subject, when you hit here, you should get about 3.6. But because these are not top balanced, I'm going to get more like 3.2 or 3.3. So put it on the first one. You can see on the multimeter there, it's 3.2. That means that one is wired correctly. Now this next one should be like 6.4. You see, 6.4. Then the next one, 9.6. This last one should be 13 something. And it's 12.9 because again, the battery is not fully charged. But there you can see it's hitting about 13. So this harness is wired correctly, and that's how you double check that it's wired correctly. Never hook this up before you test it, because if you hook it into your BMS, you can cause problems. So now we can wire our BMS. On this BMS, I have 2 sets of wires, B- and C-. The B- are what we're going to use to attach there. The C- is going to be the new end of your battery. So we're just going to take these 2 ends, and we're going to secure it here, and we're going to put the harness in, and we can test and see if we have a battery. Harness goes in, just like that. Now we have a Bluetooth dongle, so we can actually test it through the Bluetooth. We can test it old-fashioned way. We're going to do both. There you go. You can see we have a completed battery. Now I'm going to grab my Bluetooth, and I'll show you what it looks like on the Bluetooth app. Waiting to connect. There you go. Shows the state of charge, shows the voltage, shows all your cells. So we have created a battery. It's really that simple. So before I talked about top balancing, so again, I can't top balance because I got these cells already in series. But when you get DIY cells, what you want to do is you want to put them all in parallel first. So it means all the negatives, all the positives. Then you want to put a bus bar across them. And you want to charge that battery up. Let it sit, charge it up, let it sit, charge it up. That will equalize all of the cells. That'll make a stronger battery. Now this came out of a battery, so I'm assuming they already did that when they made the battery. So that shouldn't be an issue with me. So when I charge batteries now, I normally use an actual battery charger, but I'm going to use my old-fashioned power supply because it's going to show us some numbers that I want to talk about. So to charge it, you just take your negative, then you take your positive, put it over here to your positive. Make sure your dials are turned all the way counterclockwise. Turn on your power supply. And see right there, it shows the state of charge. So now we have to turn our power supply so the voltage is higher than the voltage of the battery. I'm going to turn up this, which is going to be the amps, a little bit. So now we're charging up our battery. Let's look at it on the Bluetooth app. So you can see we got 120 watts coming in this. While the battery's charging, I wanted to do the same test that I did on the battery that I got these cells out of. Now, when I did that, I tried that. When I was testing the low temperature protection, it didn't work. So let's see if it works on this one. I got my phone right there and we'll be able to watch it. Plus you'll see on the power supply. So you see, low temperature protection works on this BMS. Now I'm going to warm this back up. We'll see if it comes back. I've just got my hands on it. And see, once it warms back up, it starts charging again. Now let's see if the high end, the heat end, works as well. Got my little heat gun here. Again, same thing. So on this BMS, the low temperature and the high temperature protection works. Here's something else I want to show you that the BMS does. It'll protect the cells from being overcharged. If the battery as a whole gets over 14.6, the BMS will shut it down. If one cell gets over 3.65, it'll shut down the charging. So it's almost done charging, and you can see it's starting to balance the cells. So within a few seconds here, it should shut down the charging. So you can see the battery is starting to get really, really full, and there we go. It gets full. The battery BMS says no more charging. It turns off the charging. So now I can turn this off. But that is another way that a BMS protects the battery. Another way a BMS protects a battery is overcurrent. So what I did is I hooked up my inverter to my battery. I'm going to apply a load. Now this is 150 amp BMS on this battery, so it should allow 150 amps, and it's going to allow a surge too. So you're going to see more than 150 amps for just a few seconds. Then the BMS is going to say, hold up a second, you've been running more than 150 amps for more than a few seconds, and it's going to shut the battery down so it doesn't get damaged. After a few seconds, it's going to say, okay, we're cool, and it's going to allow the battery to turn back on. So I'm going to turn this all on, apply a load, and I'll show you this in real time. It's a space heater. You can see it's doing 122 amps. It's saying, hey, we're fine at 122 amps. Now I'm going to turn on a bigger load. I got a heat gun here. And you can see it jumps up to almost 190 amps. And it's going to say, okay, I'll give you a few seconds. I'll let you do this. Maybe you're surging something. Then it says, nope, too much. And it shuts it down. Now I'm going to click this again, because in a few seconds, it'll say, okay, I'm going to rest for 10, 15 seconds. There you go. Now the battery is back to being turned on. We can turn the inverter back on. And then we can apply our loads again. This time I'm going to do a small load. And you can see the battery saying, hey, okay, you're doing 70 amps. I'm fine with this. So overcurrent protection is an absolutely critical part of the protection that the BMS offers. Without it, you can have internal issues. Your wires can get too hot. You can have a lot of problems, including catastrophic failure. So you have to have a battery that has a BMS that has proper overcurrent protection. I'm going to put this back in a box, but I want to get as much of this goopy tar crap off of it as I possibly can. The battery came like this on the side, so I'm thinking I might just put it back on its side in a box. And I want to try to reuse the lid. Here's the lid. I like these terminals, so my thinking here is to build a base and then build a small box and then use the old top. There's the new insides of our battery. I turned the battery on its side. That's how the original battery was built. I mounted the BMS on the side, which is the new top, which was how the old one was. I moved these wires, so now they go this way. Taped everything down. The Bluetooth mod is over here. The temperature sensor is over here. So now I'll let this dry. And now I'm going to build a box. So I cut out some wood. Got a piece of plywood at the base. That's the same size as the old battery. Then I cut out some sides. I have this and this. It's not a woodworking channel, so I'm not going to go too far into the woodworking stuff. If you are a woodworker, I'm sure you can do this much better than me. I have very rudimentary tools and absolutely no woodworking ability. But I will tell you about the electrical part. I'm going to use this as the top, which is the old top. So I'm going to wire from here, from this guy to here with 4-gauge wire. I'm going to have 2 4-gauge wires going up from there to there. And I'm going to make, this is obviously too long, so I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. And then I've got these ends here, which I'll replace. And then on this side here, on the negative, I'm hoping that that reaches. That'll really make my life a lot easier if it actually reaches. So I never know if it's too much or too little. I don't want to make this video so long that it's boring, but I don't want to miss key parts where people go, what did you do there? So I did turn these wires around from here. I just unscrewed them, turned them around, so now they'll reach the underside of the negative. And then I have this wire that I cut in half. This will go from here to the underside of the box. And I'm just going to quickly cut the wire, and then I'm going to put these on. If you've never done that, it's pretty simple. This is a really cool tool. If you don't have this, get it. It's great for large wire. You just put it on like that, and you turn it, and it strips the wire out. And it's just excellent. I just love this tool. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hammer crimper, and I'm going to put this in here like that. Then it goes into the hammer crimper, and then I just hit it with a hammer, and then it connects those two. It's a great seal. Then I have some heat shrink that I will put on top of this to make it look good. And I'll film all this, and I might not include it if it's too long, but that's pretty much what I'm doing. Pretty straightforward. And then I just use the heat gun to get this shrink wrap going, or the heat shrink. So there is my completed box. And again, this is not a woodworking channel. I have very limited woodworking skills. An actual wood craftsman could make a much better box. But my goal was to be able to reuse the lid. So I designed it so the Luan would slide in to these grooves here. We'll see if it works. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the positive and the negative, and they'll just go here. This is the negative, and that's the positive. Then once the lid's on, I'll have an actual battery. Now, because I am using 4-gauge wire instead of the 8-gauge wire, the bolts that came with it are too small, of course. So what I've done is I've put in larger, these are 8 mil, just like the other ones. These are longer, so they'll be able to fit the leads. And now I'm just going to wire it up. So this is kind of the idea. I will glue this down now. Maybe caulk the sides a little bit. And I'll have a new, improved, homemade DIY battery. Well, there you go. If you have any questions about what I did, please leave a comment below. Really helps out the channel. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to everyone soon.